Every Thursday when I hear that music, it just makes my heart smile. Hi, and welcome back to the Up Zone where understanding politics is made simple. We are your two hosts, Mr. Elmer Floyd, from former House Representative for the state of North Carolina with House District 43, and Tisha S. Waddell, former City Council person with the City of Fayetteville, District 3. Mr. Floyd, how go you this morning?
So good, so far, so far, so good.
What's new on the horizon with you, sir?
No, I just wanted to announce that the Martin Luther King Committee is having this candlelight vigil tonight at 5:30 at the Martin Luther King Park. And Milton Yarborough has passed away, and the arrangements, are incomplete. He was a faculty member and also a very important community leader, in our community. So if you have time, teach at 5:30, stop by the Martin Luther King Committee and Milton Yarborough arrangement at this time is incomplete. So
Okay.
that's what uh, is out there other than the other issues that we may get a chance to talk about today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are you enjoying this taste of spring, Mr. Floyd? Or are you like me and looking forward to summer?
Doesn't matter, teach. The Lord gives it to us. So you just
Absolutely.
have to walk out the door and just appreciate it.
And listen, and apparently is what we need because it's what we have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
so you just make the adjustment and go out. Or
Absolutely.
you make no adjustment and stay in.
And stay in. We're in that weird place in our house right now where it's like my husband, because he doesn't I tend to run cold, and so I keep it very warm. And in the winter, I'm a little bit inflexible about being cold. And so now we're at that place where he's like, listen, it is not cold outside. We do not need this heat on like this. And so I'm sitting here now with the throw on my legs. And when we get off of the podcast, I'm gonna throw my little sweatsuit on because I respect my husband and I'm not gonna turn the heat on.
Well, you got to look at it, Tisha. That's the whole process that we look at. Someone looks at the financial responsibility of the house and how can we provide comfort, at the same time making sure that we can meet all of our financial obligations.
Yeah, but see, his thing is he don't want to be hot, Floyd, because he can afford for us to turn that heat on. But I'm okay with it because he is right. It's warm outside. I can go outside, and I like this time of year. So we got a good compromise going.
Well, I tell you what you do. You go out and you watch people that stand on the various corners. You
Floyd, I
don't
don't know
see
how
them
they
stand
do
on.
it.
You don't see them stand on the shade side, Tish.
I don't know how they do it
They stand on the sunny side, and if it's a brick building, they stand against the sunny side
of
brick
the
building
building.
where the heat is, and the heat really heats those bricks. It's
That's
pretty
right.
much
That's right. And I'm gonna tell you, Floyd, I've often said that I believe that the homeless community particularly the homeless community, and I'm not even gonna call them homeless because some of them have a home, but the panhandlers that stand on our corners and ask for money, they must be making really good money because they work, to me, harder than people that have a 9 to 5. Because to stand in the middle of that traffic and they have to go up and down that street, up and down that street, up and down that street, regardless of the weather, regardless of the element, they are there. They are there. And I've often said you can go get you a job as a greeter at Walmart and have less activity going on, but I guess
yeah.
they making money
They making money, Tish, and they work at their own leisure.
and they don't have to pay any taxes.
Yes.
But anyhow, as the rest of us continue forward, anyhow, Mr. Floyd, I think it's very interesting the things that we've got going on in the news lately. But before we get started on our major topics, I do want to touch on you and I were talking about the school voucher program, and you said something to me that I did not realize, but that I thought was very, very interesting and leveled the playing field and took away some of the gasoline out of the people who oppose this measure. So, Mr. Floyd, you were explaining to me that with this school voucher program, the way that it's structured is that it's going to fund the need first. Those with the greatest need, it will fund them first, and then those with the least need, if there are dollars available, then they will receive funding. Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
Well, the voucher the voucher program as it exists, has today has four tiers: tier one, two, three, and four.
Mm-hmm.
Tier one and two is considered, low income and moderate.
Mm-hmm.
Tier three and four are your high end income person.
Mm-hmm.
The way the bill was drafted, so that means that everyone in North Carolina can apply for the voucher program,
Regardless of income.
regardless of income. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
But but the key thing that they look at is federal free lunch. Those person will get those person will get the corporation first, the support first.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, when you look at it, there's about 72,000 people that have applied. They have ran out of money and may seek during the short session additional funds in order to increase the enrollment. What is happening now is that many parents now see one thing: choice that they have. Now, grant you, public education is going to be here. It has 58% of the budget, but parents should have, where possible, choice. If where you live and food line is right up the street and it's a D student, and you have an opportunity to go past food line to go to the fire station right up on Rose Hill Road, then that should be your choice. If you can do that, if you can talk with relatives, a cousin, whoever, to provide to assist you with transportation to
Mm-hmm.
that school.
Absolutely.
So so I think that when you look at it, for some people it's good, for some people it's bad. Although the executive branch is talking about a moratorium on voucher, that's a good conversation for the general election in 24. But I don't see at this particular point in time that there would be a moratorium on vouchers. So that's that's where we are teach with voucher. I think again for some it's good, for others they say that we should not provide that and have a moratorium on vouchers.
And it's so interesting, Mr. Floyd, because the public schools are hemorrhaging, um, they're hemorrhaging students. And the applications for it for attending these private schools is rapidly increasing. And so I think that we are seeing that as a direct result of this legislation to bolster the voucher program.
Well, teach here in Cumberland County as it relates to uh, private schools and other schools here within Cumberland County. We have about 51 private school and voucher schools, academies here in Cumberland County. And that's because parents are looking at choice. What is the best quality of education for my child?
My child.
Now, grant you, public education educate the best and the brightest that they have that is sent to them.
Absolutely.
So, so it's not being critical of public school by no means,
And
but
I
it
think we
allows
should
the
be very
parents.
clear that we're not criticizing the teachers either. I think
No,
that the problem of the public school has to do with the way that the public school is governed, not the way that the teachers desire to teach. Because it is very clear, and I say this all the time, it is very clear that any person that enters into teaching at a public school is doing so primarily because they love what they do,
they
and
love teaching.
they really want to educate those students, because there are few other incentives that exist for those teachers. People say, "Oh, well, they get their summers off and they get their holidays off," but they're unpaid summers. It's
Yeah,
unpaid. So that's not a huge incentive to be off. That's like not having a job during the summer. These teachers teach because they love what they do. They love
and,
what they do.
and you're correct. I mean, you really got to love. I was talking with the person yesterday that is going to have the Martin Luther King candlelight virgin, and he was just talking about how some of the students come back and call him to inform him about their progress and extend the hand of fellowship to him to come and see them and visit them while they're doing other activities, whatever it may be. And he just feel honored that after X years, let's say 4, 5, 6 years, that the student would call him and acknowledge what he have done over their lifespan, and they just want to keep in contact with him. So public school does, you know, but then again, we have a lot of minorities now that are using the voucher program. So
Right.
so to me, and one said that they look at corporate taxes, say that we're taking money, away from corporate. They talk about how corporate tax play a role in this, is that we should not lower corporate taxes, that we should take that money and put in education. But when you look at 58% of the budget, and then again you want to attract jobs, unfortunately, industry don't go where there's no incentives.
That's right.
And for you to attract incentives, you got to be able to give something. And if you have a 14% corporate tax and the state next to you have a 3% corporate tax, and I produce the same thing in South Carolina, Virginia, and Georgia, I'll go there. But if you look at the overall picture, is that look at the money that these industry bring in and help those communities, which again, if it help those communities, it also help the state, because the state is going to receive some, and I hate to say it, Tisha, you don't have to worry about it. Come April the 15th, the state is going to receive some of that money that these industry brought in from the taxpayer.
Oh, for sure. They're going to get their tax dollars one way or another. They're going to get
And
them.
that's how the state is able to operate, because on April the 15th, you're gonna file your taxes.
Right.
Okay.
Now,
So if you
now
didn't
as
so if you didn't have no one working, what I mean, and no one paying taxes, both sale taxes and withholding taxes, then the state couldn't exist. So
now as we're talking about the educational system, Mr. Floyd, and as we're talking about it at the primary level, so well, primary, secondary, we see at the tertiary level a conversation going on at FSU where the provost is facing a no confidence vote. So, Mr. Floyd, what does that say about what's going on over at Fayetteville State University? Because it's all
well,
academic. It's all academic.
no, well, when you look at it, if you look at Fayetteville State, it's one of the 16 university campus,
Hmm.
which is governed by the board of governors, which is 24 members, which set the standards or set the policy for those campuses. And so the board of governors want the professor to move from, I think it's 9 hours of teaching to 24 hours, which is 12 hours per semester.
Right.
So some of the faculty members believe that it's going to create undue hardship given what the other responsibilities that they have. Now,
Now,
whether we like it or not,
Paul Wolverton did a very good job with this article, Mr. Floyd, because one of the things that I found very interesting was that he highlighted that the resolution that they provided a resolution where it was complaints listed across 2 pages, 13 complaints listed across 2 pages. I guess it's all summed up by saying you're putting more work on us and you're taking away our ability to be able to do some of the other things that we have traditionally done. and they're grieved by that.
Well, what teach, you know, if you look at it, one of the concerns with moving from text, from printed to
Right.
me, oh, what did you call it? Uh, Video, whatever
To
you want to
being
call it,
online. Hmm.
online, online.
So taking textbooks and using online textbooks versus hardbound textbooks, which
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, Mr. Floyd. I think our generation, starting from my generation and going back to your generation, we most certainly valued cover textbook, like something that we could put in our hands.
Yes.
These students are very technological. And the reality is, a lot of us probably have textbooks from 10, 15, 20 years ago floating around our house that we don't even use. So it's kind of six of one and half a dozen of another. And those books are so expensive.
Yes, they are.
They're so
They are.
expensive. And so I can see both a benefit and I can see, a negative aspect of not not having a hard copy textbook.
What you got to look at it, teach. I mean, you know, whether we like it or not, and we're moving to that era of learning.
Right.
You know, so that's where we're moving to. And when you look at it, like one teacher mentioned that her workload will move from 150 students to
To
200
200.
students. But the average person look at it and say, all right, you're teaching 9 hours a week. Okay.
Hmm.
9 hours a week that you're actually teaching. And now society as a whole is looking at a shorter work week to 32 hours instead of the 40 hours.
Hmm.
So the average person looks at it and say, well, the average week is 40 hour work week, and so you're teaching 9 hours on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So you you're still having a lot of time to do the other resources that you need to do.
And I think one of the things that the faculty is probably leaning on is the fact that the 9 hours in the classroom is just the tip of the iceberg, because then you have your prep time to prepare for that 9 hours in the classroom. You have the time that you have to spend with the students as an advisor in some cases. You have your office hours where you're responding to challenges that your students are facing. You're responding to any questions that they may have about the coursework. You also have a mandate or a requirement on these university professors to do research and to post journal
But
articles.
teacher, you're right about that. I mean, I understand that, but look at the your child, your grandchildren. Now that teacher works from 8 o'clock. I'm gonna say basic time from 8 o'clock to let's say 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 5 days a week, and
Absolutely. And
then
then
on
they still
Saturday,
have to go home and
and
they
they
still have to grade papers and they still have to, and in many instances, Mr. Floyd, especially when you get to the middle school grade level for teaching, they have almost just as many students because they've got 4 or 5 classes with
yeah.
sometimes 30 kids in them or more. And so you're looking at a pretty heavy workload still. So I completely agree with your point. I just want to make sure that we don't lead our audience to believe that all university, because some people may not have attended college and they may think that all they're doing is 9 hours of work. But I think it's also very interesting that the pushback doesn't seem to necessarily belong in the provost lap, because it seems like the provost is responding to the University of North Carolina systems policy that they've implemented, because this policy sets a baseline that faculty at the 16 university campuses across the state will teach 24 credit hours per academic year, which essentially works out to 4 classes per semester, which is what this guideline that's being laid out by the provost indicates.
Well, that's. I mean, the board of governors really say for instance, it determines the policy for these 16 campuses. And they also look at the overall picture, which is based on enrollment. And
Hmm.
so if you don't have the student there, then your funding will be decreased the next funding year. And so all of these things is taking place. And then again, you have to look at what courses are taught at the various universities, so that they all won't have the same courses. So it's good and it's bad. But anytime I found out that as a legislator, the first thing that always come to us is that I can't do it. Uh, is that where's the funding coming from? So we have that problem.
Right. So another issue that we saw, and I'll tell you, and I think to your credit, I will say, Mr. Floyd, yes, there's a sentiment in reading this. When I read this article, there's a sentiment that I walked away from that said, why do you want to be a part of a system that you don't think you can meet the requirements of? And why are you holding the provost accountable for upholding the standard that the UNC system has put in place?
Well, Tish, when you look at the chancellor now, uh, the chancellor cannot go to the board of governors and say to them the policy that you are asking me as a chancellor to implement. I cannot do it.
Right.
And and if he is brave enough to do that, then our chancellor will be looking for employment elsewhere.
And I'll say I did like his response where he said, "We're going to have to all figure it out, starting with me." And I think that when you have leadership at the top that says, "I am as invested in putting in as much work as I want to see you put in," that makes it a little bit easier for you to go about the business of putting in the work. And so I can appreciate that as a response. Now, Mr. Floyd, speaking about lazy and speaking about selfish, the county board addresses quote unquote selfish and lazy illegal dumping. Now, this is an issue that you and I are both very well acquainted with, particularly given the areas that we have served and that we reside in, because where we have wooded areas or where we have the road less traveled, you will often find illegal dumping. I found interesting the county's response to this concern. And I really like the fact that I think it was the county attorney made a statement and he was heard. And the statement was, I wonder if cost is a barrier preventing people from going and dumping their stuff. And I will say to that, absolutely it is. Because when you are charging a rate that's in excess of $5, because $5, people can usually swallow $5. But when you're charging a rate in excess of $5 to get rid of garbage, something that people don't want anyway, I don't think there's a huge incentive, especially when there's no enforcement behind illegal dumping. There's no huge incentive to not dump this stuff right here off off the side of the road.
But Tish, when you was a little bit younger, we had what you might call, I'm using this term now, what you might call throw out. Where the city will come by, during the summer months or whatever, and pick up whatever it was, yard trash or
Mhm,
whatever.
mhm,
Okay. Now, the other day, I, you, mulch, over a period of time. It said it lasts for 12 months. Okay.
mhm.
So you had to change it out. So, I raked it, put it in 2 containers, and got a notice in the container that they didn't pick up mulch, but it's yard trash now.
Right.
Okay. But they didn't pick it up. So I called and asked the question why, and that's when I found out that they didn't pick up mulch any longer. So that means that as a citizen, now I got to go to the landfill And when I called the landfill, they said $38 a ton on a pickup truck to carry and dump it. But I'm also paying city taxes, to pick up yard trash. And so uh, then you get a sign say no nails, no paint, no this, no that. So when you really look at it, it looked like the city itself have limited the things that they are going to pick up. So people then begin to say, I'm paying all of these taxes and I can't. We used to get 2 days trash pickup. Now we're down to one. Now even recycle is every other week. And then yard trash is once, and it got to be in a container.
Right.
So people are just stressed out with all of these new changes. So after a while, it used to be three person on the truck. Now you got one. You got an arm and a driver.
Right.
So
And it's a
so
lot to keep up with. And because there's not a really clear method for being able to get information out to people who are not visiting your website, it's difficult. It's challenging for people to know what's going on. So, for the purposes, if you live right now in Cumberland County, which if you're watching this, you probably do, they are introducing a pilot program where they are going to be temporarily reducing solid waste flat fees, hoping that these cheaper rates are going to encourage people to properly dispose of their waste at county sites. Now, here's the thing: if you don't know, you don't know. So the reduced fee is going to be $10 per load instead of the normal $20 rate, while bulk items will cost $5 per item to dispose of instead of $10. Now, again, most people don't care to pay to throw their garbage away.
well,
Most
teach.
people
I
don't.
was told now, like I said, when I called, I know you said $20, but when I called there, I was told that it was
$38.
$38 a ton.
Right.
Okay, so now you're saying $20.
But
So
but that was for that was a different type of, and see, this is the other confusion, Floyd, because there's all these different types of garbage. So this is construction related debris. So as an example, my husband's in the HVAC field. When
mhm,
they pull out antiquated HVAC systems that have died, they've got to be able to take that stuff somewhere. When
yes,
you have somebody, and this is even if you're just, say you change your bathtub out in your house, you wouldn't necessarily consider that construction debris because all you did was change out your bathtub.
mhm,
But no, that's construction debris. And so now you have to pay to get rid of the old bathtub. Like you said, you used to be able to sit the old bathtub out by the street and the city or somebody would come and pick it up and it would be gone. Not anymore. Not
mhm.
anymore. So there's different types of debris. I think the best thing that could possibly happen is if they really simplified this system and I guess,
But
but
you,
they
well, you look at it, teacher. Also, it's when your husband on this little small pickup truck carry that H back to the landfill to dump it. That brother has a line to stand in. Okay, he has a line to stand in along with the other trash trucks.
yeah. So the county estimated that they're going to lose about $40,000 in fees with this. Mr. Floyd, I think that it might have been interesting to see what they would have been able to do with that $40,000 if they left things as is, and then took that $40,000 and invested it into enforcement of reducing illegal dumping. Because I think sometimes we're so quick as a municipality and as a county and probably as a nation to excuse bad behavior by trying to accommodate why we think people are performing poorly. And I think instead we have these rules on the book that are not enforced. I think if we focused on enforcement, just like you always say about code enforcement, I think if we focused on enforcement, we would see fewer of these things happening. Much like when you see somebody drive down the street and just chuck garbage out of their window, if there was an active enforcement effort to penalize these things, I don't think we'd keep seeing them.
Well, teachers is no different. G. When you see a person come into a neighborhood, like my neighborhood, and bring a 18 wheeler and park it on the street, I mean, but there's so many layers for that particular person to remove that truck. You had to wait 20 days to do this and another day, but at the same time, he is tearing up the street and going to cost the city more money. So it's the same thing about, why not have like we used to have is a cleanup day, where it would allow uh, uh, our community to throw away certain things and let the city pick that up. It used to be when that you could rake your leaves to the side of the street and the city would come along and suck them up. Now they say bag them up. Now they say no longer put them in a bag, they must be in a container. And so, you're finding out every year with
It's
new
something else.
changes.
It's something new. It's something new every year.
Because I got a gentleman down the street now, and then they said it's 4 containers, I think, that they are done. The gentleman down the street raked his yard, and I guess he doesn't know he has about 12 bags out there.
Hmm.
So how long will we have to look at these 12 bags before he realized that they must be in a container, if you understand what I mean?
Absolutely.
So they're gonna be out there for a while some teenager or some young person with a stick is gonna go and bust the bags open, and the leaves gonna be right back. So what I'm simply saying, Teach, what we try to do is to help the city, I mean the citizen, is to have a beautiful community. When people ride through and visit, that they can say Fayetteville and Cumberland County is a very clean county and city. But there's so many stumbling blocks that we have to face.
Absolutely. And I just think that everybody should have to do their part because it is not the government's job to come and clean my house up, nor is it the government's job to come and clean up my street. That is our responsibility. And the less responsibility we give to our government, the less we can expect that we should have to give them our tax dollars. If we go back to doing some of these things that we know to do for ourselves, then maybe we can begin to expect that these tax increases should not keep coming and coming and coming.
But
Now,
Teach, I give you, yeah, let me give you another example. Approximately 6 feet from the back of the curb really belongs to the city. Okay. The first 12 inches is for PWC utility lines, and another 48 to 5 feet is for sidewalks. But we cut that part back of the curb to our fence. So suppose we just leave it as it was and let the city, then we will have a trees, weeds, and everything else, you know, uh, as it relates to the appearance of our city. But the community people, they cut the grass all the way to the curb, if you understand what I mean. You don't stop 5 feet from the back of the curb and
mhm,
say, this is the city. I'm going to let the city cut this.
right, because it's ours until they need it.
Yeah.
Speaking of ours until and speaking of which, I don't even know how to transition to this, but I thought this was interesting. We read an article that the Fayetteville Mayor Mitch Colvin joins national effort to curb crime. So he is now a part of the new Black Mayors Coalition on Crime, which, as described in a news release, is an initiative to harness the collective power of Black mayors across the nation to fight crime. Sounds like a superhero comic book. Black mayors across the nation fight crime.
Well,
this, this
you know,
organization currently has 21 mayors across 12 states and held its first meeting in Memphis, Tennessee on Wednesday and Thursday, hosted by Mayor Paul Young, who is leading the effort. What are your thoughts about that, Mr. Floyd?
it's a good gesture. It's a good gesture, but having said that, but the but comes that many times when I watch news feed, I didn't know that we had so many black chief of police across this nation. I'm just amazed when I see a news feed to see that the chief of police is an African American.
Why does it amaze you, Floyd?
Because it's something that you don't believe, but you see it. And so, if that's the case, then it seems like we can make some gesture about how we, address crime. When you allow,
That would infer that crime is black. That
no,
would be an inference that says that crime,
I'm not
and
saying
that's
that.
but to me that's even so. Let me say this. To me, that's even what this effort says to me. When I read this, it says crime is black. Let us black folks get together and figure out how we
See,
can address this black crime.
you can address crime through code enforcement.
I agree
We,
with you. I'm not,
okay,
I don't
what I'm
disagree.
saying now,
All I'm saying is when you
yeah,
have an initiative that says a new Black Mayors Coalition on Crime, where Black mayors get together to decide how they can address crime, how they can
where
fight
is
crime.
crime located at, T? Crimes are located in areas wherein that elected official allow those areas to deteriorate.
But Mr. Floyd, are
Okay.
they black? Are we now acknowledging that crime? Because see, on one hand, we're saying y'all stop stopping black people in Fayetteville because black people are not the only purveyors of crime. But then on the other hand, we have a mayor who says, "Let me go join these other black mayors so that we can figure out how black mayors across the nation can fight crime." Why is this a black issue?
It's not a black issue, but what I'm saying is that crime happen to be in areas of low income. For instance, T, when we look at our population here in the city of Fayetteville, we are 43 to 44% African American, then the other percentages are scrambled down. When we look at our school system, we are 70% of the school population, you know. But when we look at the overall fee, we put emphasis in other areas and not, again, I'm a strong advocate of code enforcement. Okay.
Me
But
too, Mr. Floyd.
but when you allow an area to deteriorate, and then again you have people who have 10 cars that they or 20 cars at their house every day. There's a reason for that. But you allow these things to take place in our community. Again, code enforcement will help deteriorate certain crimes, because what they would say is that I know that I can go by James' house or Tom's house. His house is open 24/7. Okay. 24/7, that I know that I can go by James' house. And then that's deteriorate the community.
So I want to go back to my question because Mayor Mitch Colvin is a part of a new Black Mayors Coalition on Crime, which is described in a news release as an initiative to harness the collective power of Black mayors across the nation to fight crime. Is crime Black?
No crime is not black.
Okay. Okay.
Crime
That's
crime is not crime is not black. But the media source always feed like in our state.
Mr.
They
Floyd,
they
we,
say,
we're doing it to ourselves. When we set up Black mayors coalitions to find um, results to crime, that says it in itself. So we're doing it, and I don't disagree with you that the media has for decades or maybe centuries portrayed Black people as the purveyors of crime. But I also, and let me say this too, I don't think this is a bad initiative. I don't think it's a bad initiative. I'm not going to sit here and say that I disagree with what they're doing because I don't disagree with what they're doing. My concern comes in when we are not willing to say out loud what we're already saying without saying it, which is Black folks are committing a lot of these petty crimes. We need to figure out why. So when we're talking about, and I'll go back to what we say when we're talking about, and I'm approve what I said so that nobody has to come and try to disprove me. When we talk about people being stopped or arrested here in Fayetteville, when you look at the statistics of the purveyors of the shootings last year, the people who were found to be shooting were not white kids. The people who were getting shot were not white kids. It was our children, Mr. Floyd. It was Black children. And it was Black children with the guns in their hands, and it was Black children with the bullets in their bodies. And until we are willing to acknowledge that publicly and openly without accepting crime as being Black, because I'm not saying crime is Black, but I'm saying that our statistics and our data and the fact that who we arrest with the smoking gun looks like me and you is an indicator that something is going on in our communities that we need to address.
Well, the key thing of it is, Tish, we say that Black life matters.
But we won't even
Okay.
hold ourselves to that.
But when it comes down to Black and Black crime, Black life matters when they say that a white officer shoots a Black person. Then it's Black life matters. But when it's Black on Black crime, it's different. Okay, it is different. So how how do we do that, Chief? One way people saying that, we have food deserts is one, which is another side thing. We have a high unemployment rate. There's not sufficient enough jobs, or people don't want jobs.
Mr.
As some
Floyd, the
person said.
decline in the Black community comes from the break of the family. It comes from the
But
break of
it's
the
not.
family. We've always
We have a lot of mothers.
black
No,
people in the United States have always been food insecure. We had to eat. That's why we eat chitlins and we eat root vegetables. Because we didn't have access to the same level of wealth. Education was always something that we were declining. So these were never the issues. The reason that the Black community was not the major purveyor of crime back in the day is because mom and dad were at home and they were taking care of their children and they had a standard that they enforced. Black families fell apart, which resulted in Black boys and girls having to essentially fend for themselves because mama was at work trying to make sure that everything stayed together and there was no dad there who was being an authoritative disciplinarian.
and I would say, Tish, is that you have a lot of single parents, both male and female. You know, both male and female that are raising their children, and they are good products. Okay.
But you have a
But
lot more who have a lot of challenges, a
oh
lot
yeah,
of challenges.
no
The
one is.
vast majority of single parents, particularly poor single parents, are experiencing issues where their children are concerned, especially in our Black, not just in our Black, but in all of these communities. And the issue is compounded when those single parents don't have a support mechanism. So, as an example, there are some single parents. I was one of them. I had a fantastic support network. My mother had my back. My family is very tight knit, very close. So when I experienced the break in my family, where me and my ex husband were no longer together, and way before that, before we even married, and I was raising my child by myself, I wasn't alone. I had a church family. I had my family. I had really great friends that were a good network, but I was surrounded by a different kind of population. We're not talking about us kind of single parents. We're talking about the single parents whose children are the purveyors of this crime.
Well, Tish, yeah, I'm not disagreeing. With you on what what you are saying, but in our community, we like all of those resources. You know, growing up, they used to be. When you look at where I live, the nearest recreation center is Smith
But I didn't
Recreation.
say nothing about a recreation center. My kids wasn't raised in a rec center.
No, but I'm saying for activity to keep the kids off the
I
street.
said
There's some kind
church
of
and
instructions.
family.
What you? I mean,
It's a church on every corner in Murkison Road.
well, it should be. It should be Murkison Road, Heaven's Drive. Okay, with the number of churches, like you said, that that's there. But in order to address the issue of black on black crime, we need to look at all of the uh, the sources are there. Now, when it used to be that Murkison Road, and you mentioned that used to be a high crime area. Now, because
Murkison
of
Road
the
used to be a pocket of wealth, Floyd. Move past the perception of the crime in Murkison Road. And I don't even know the reason I use Murkison Road is because that's where people perceive the crime is. But if you move past that, Murkison Road was a pocket of wealth. But okay, so let me add one other thing. It was church, family, and community. We've lost all of that.
yeah,
Black folks have lost all of that. We don't know our neighbors because we want to move on up and go, we even the poor people trying to look like they got it. They trying to look rich. So they out here spending money to look like something that they're not. Then you got people who won't go to church, won't build them a network of people who will help them raise their children, who will have their back when times get hard, who, when you are food insecure, will offer you a meal, won't do that. And then you got people who despise their family, and some for good reason, because some of their family is deplorable. But and not just black folks, y'all. I'm not just talking about black folks, but I'm specifically speaking to my people. We got to stop blaming stuff that's not to be blamed. Food insecurity is not why black people commit crime. Poverty is not why black people commit crime. We've been poor. We've been food insecure. We know these things. We came out of slavery where we didn't have anything.
you're
But
right.
we didn't come out and become criminals. We came out and we became upstanding men and women who had our own community that thrived and flourished. It wasn't until that system was infiltrated by the government where the government said, okay, we got to break this up because we were doing too
Well,
much.
well, teach what the government does, and you and I well know those persons who depended upon assistance from the government provide limited assistance,
And
and the government.
you can't have daddy at home. If you listen, if you getting help from us, he can't be there.
Well, that's one of the factors. And then again, they keep you on a 30-day strain. Okay. You're only going to get X dollars to last you for 30 days. So
Right,
your whole thought is, how am I? Your whole move, your mode from the first to the last is survival.
right.
How can I survive with this minimum amount of income? And people, they know that. I can recall the time that individual was getting $563 for 12 weeks, I believe it was, with some assistance kicking the federal government to 26 weeks. They removed that 525 down to six, down to 263, and you had to get 4 apps per week in order to keep that for 12 weeks. So you were placed into a survival mode all the time, and we became dependent on that. And so once you become dependent on something, then you're trapped.
And I hope that and I want to go back to this article because I do want to commend not only our mayor for this initiative, but also the other 21 mayors from across the 12 states who are participating in this initiative. And I want to challenge them. Y'all get real in these conversations and y'all tell the truth about what's going on in the Black community. And even if you feel like it makes us uncomfortable, be honest because we will never get any better if we don't tell the truth about what's really ailing us. And listen, and I'll say this about Mayor Mitch Holtman. I don't really care what anybody has ever said about him. One thing they could never say about him was that he was not a good father because he loves his children. And I believe that his children are the byproduct, even though they are the product of divorce, because we know that he and his wife, his ex-wife, are divorced and they are co-parenting their children. But the fact that they are co-parenting and because they have a support network. Listen, I'm give you all the here's all the factors. Mitch is a church man. He was raised in a church. He has a church family and a church home. Mitch is a community man. He was raised in the Broadell community. The Broadell community still calls him theirs. And he's a family man. Those three things have led to his success. He should be able to acknowledge that. We can see that. The fact that he has done that for his children is leading to their success. Tell your fellow mayors that are a part of this coalition what helped you succeed and how you defied the odds and did not become a statistic in this community. The rest of those mayors need to look at their lives and see what was it for us that helped us to defy the odds and become pillars in our community. And then come back to your communities and call us higher and stop making excuses for us being Black and degenerate. Call us higher. Hold us accountable the same way that we hold you accountable. And if you do that, I will champion what you are doing with this initiative. I hope it's not just fluff, Floyd.
Well, I like to, I would like to see, what the mayor, and if the mayor do not have a council, for instance, we here in Fayetteville, we have 8 members of the city council and 4 members of the and 4 members of the county board of commissioners. And what we see in our community is that they always talk about our ability to attain grants.
Mr. Floyd, let me ask you a question. I want to transition because we only got a couple minutes. Mr. Floyd, let me ask you this. What you think about this free speech, U.S. Supreme Court free speech ruling, where they have deemed that if you have a personal social media page and you conduct as an elected official any official business on there, you cannot block, you cannot delete any comments, you cannot at all restrict freedom of speech on your personal social media page. And they used as an example the lawsuit that Mayor Jackie Warner faced and lost, where she had done those things on her page. What do you think about that? What does that say to our elected officials?
Is that one of the same?
Is what one and the same?
Both. It's one of the same. I mean, you have your personal page, but at the same time, you are an elected official. So that sort of supersedes.
Absolutely. And I think what it said to me is y'all elected officials better shut down y'all, not shut down. You don't have to close your personal page, but make it private. Keep just your people on there. Stop trying to be a superstar on your personal page. So if you want to issue out information through social media, set you up a separate social media account, which should be tied to the IT department of your municipality and do your business from there. That way they keep everything, they maintain everything, and everything's on the up and up. And I think maybe what should happen is municipalities should set up social media for each of their districts and each of, they should set up these social medias. And then as somebody new comes in, they should just transition in that new person to take charge of that social media. It would create continuity and conversation. It would also ensure that they are not violating the law.
Well, again, they're one of the same.
They are one and the same.
Yes.
And we can leave that at that. I think that's good enough for good enough. And the last point that we want to discuss today is going to be, which I think is very interesting, because Mr. Floyd, I remember you bringing this up some time ago. We were talking about HB 10, and we were talking about where our own sheriff stood in the enforcement of HB 10 should it have passed, right? Which we never saw HB 10 pass at that time. This has been a long fight. But now we see that there are resolutions that are popping up across different municipalities in support of immigrant communities in cities. And one was attempted here in Fayetteville, and I'm glad it didn't pass. I'll be very forthcoming and tell you this is another instance where I have to say that the mayor did what he should have done. Both he, the mayor pro tem, and 2 other members of council denied this request, voted against this. 4 members of council voted for, one of whom was just not present. But this was brought forward by Mario Benavente, who happens to be the city council person for my district. And again, I say he's very out of touch with what our district desires, because this is never something that the vast majority of his constituency would have asked him to bring forward. He's pushing his own initiatives. He's moving forward his own agenda, and it is not what District 3 has asked for. And so I would venture to say that if a candidate from this community from District 3 came forward and was familiar with what the people wanted and was able to articulate that, they will have no problem being able to differentiate themselves from him as a candidate. But I'll say, I think, hey, good job, council. And this directly tied to HB 10. There are other municipalities who are coming together and having this dialogue or this discourse about what should be happening. And they're signing these resolutions, but we did not. What do you think about that, Mr. Floyd?
Well, that's a responsibility. I believe that this bill was introduced, I think, was in 2019. As it relates to, and most of the minority sure had some concerns about that because they I think it's like a 48-hour waiting period for ICE to come and see about what needs to be done as it relates to the detainee that's in the sheriff custody. And the sheriff was saying that many of those individuals have posted bond, and so you are supposed to be here within X hours. Now you want me to hold them greater than X hours, which is I think it's like 48 hours. So many of the sheriff thought that it was unconstitutional that if a person had met the requirement that he or she should be released. But many think that the sheriff should hold them. I mean, ICE should, the sheriff should hold them to ICE come. But that's something that if you notice a lot, Tish, many communities feel that all communities are really social liberal community. A lot of communities are very moderate and conservative in their thinking and in their doing. You can't assume that because some happen in Chapel Hill or in Raleigh or Charlotte, that the same atmosphere lies here in your community. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you have to look at this from a different standpoint of view. Uh, and I say this all the time: you cannot run a California offense in many southern states and southern cities. You
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. It's
Well,
just not there.
we see that this type of a resolution was passed by Carborough and Chapel Hill on Thursday, and Durham's council is set to vote on a very similar resolution. I guess, again, I have to say,
Look
I'm
at the
fine
community. T.
that exactly,
Look at the
exactly,
communities.
and I'm fine with the outcome of this. I'm not disappointed. Mr. Floyd, what do you want to leave our audience with today?
Well, Tish, I just tell you, I don't have too much thought. I just ask that our people, when they go back, come the 24th of this month, the General Assembly will reconvene in the short session. I asked that we talked about the voucher program, and we talk about teachers need increase in pay. I just wish that our representatives here that look at the voucher program, that they look at the rainy day fund, and if they want to make some contribution or adjustments for our teachers or anything, is to look at the amount of money in our rainy day fund to reduce that to the amount that the policy I think is like 2.7 million, down from 4 billions I'm speaking of now. So let's see what our members of the General Assembly is going to do when they can reconvene in the short session as it relates to bringing back revenue uh, to our community come the short session. Look at it, be very kind, be very reminded to keep a very good look at your representative and see during the short session are they going to participate in revenue projects for your community.
All right, and my final words are I thank God for Jesus. I thank God for Jesus. As we recently just celebrated Easter, or Resurrection Sunday, as many people call it, I'm very grateful for the sacrifice of my heavenly Father to send His Son down to die for me, because there's no way I could have been reconciled back to heaven without the sacrifice of the blood of Jesus. So I just thank God for Jesus. And at the end of the day, like I tell y'all all the time, all the rest of this is just a small thing in comparison to that. So I hope that you have something to be thankful for today. I hope that you have something that just brings you joy and laughter and just warms your soul on today and carries you through the remainder of this week. And remember to tell a friend, like, share, subscribe, follow, do all the things. And we'll catch you on the next episode.